Oh boy, Idiocracy. Last week I reviewed Phantom of the Paradise, and I said I regretted the delay because that made the problem with reviewing the material so much worse. Well, Idiocracy has almost all the same problems, plus it's a comedy, which means I can't even riff on it much of the time because it's already meant to be funny. Plus, I couldn't find much to tell you about it. This has been sitting and sitting and sitting as one crisis after the next came along to hold it back, and now it's here, and I just got my head buried in my hands going, I got nothing to frickin' say about it. Especially because between the time I was going to do this and now, suddenly this went from being that cult movie to ammunition in the political wars. Proof it's all coming true because people are doing this thing or that thing. Oh, Mike Judge was prescient because someone I disagreed with did something. I took one look at the schedule for January and was like, hey, yeah, politics would be a great thing to bring up because, of course, nobody's talking about that topic. Not in our current no big deal, live and let live. We've got enough problems already, society, right? It's high time someone actually mentioned some politics around here. So I tried diving into the background. Suffice to say, after 12 years at this show, this ain't my first goat fuck. I know a little bit about how to get this done, but there's nothing out there. I went everywhere I could think to look. There's no book out there with behind-the-scenes info, no concept art set up there where you can find out about the background of the Starbucks logo, no technical discussion about the choice of lens used for the garbage slide scene, and certainly no special features on the DVD, vignettes about the corporate logos, footage of how they did the arena scene, no, and certainly not some heady documentary with a title like The Burden of Vision, Genesis of Idiocracy. Nope, not a goddamn thing. So I gathered up what little information I could find and began the final step, which was trying to find contemporary interviews discussing this film with cast and crew. What can I say? I'm thorough to the point of obsessiveness. Well, thanks to the marketing on this film, which we're going to get to in a moment, there wasn't a whole lot of buzz at the time, so there aren't that many that actually occurred in 2006. Instead, you find them on the anniversary of it, 2016, which I probably don't have to tell you is where the politics comes in. Let me tell you, it doesn't matter what your political views are. By the time you get to the 5th or 6th article with the exact same theme, you get kind of sick of it. The politics shown to us in the future is that the president is a professional wrestler, Congress is full of a bunch of dude bros, and they have smashed and trashed the place. It's a dump. It is chaos. No self-respecting human being, never mind a member of the government, should be in there. But that doesn't describe 21st century politics, does it? No. So I had to sit through one podcast after the next, read one more article after the next, by some self-aggrandizing, self-satisfied, self-obsessed dickhead jerking off about how much Mike Judge's Idiocracy has to do with this rally or that demonstration, until I wanted to puke. The only solace to be found in it is the fact that, hey, at least I can talk about this. In the review, I can discuss how totally non-applicable that is. People who are protesting or campaigning today are not like they are in Mike Judge's Idiocracy. There is no commonality there whatsoever, and anyone saying otherwise just has an axe to grind, is what I would have said. However, the very day that I was turning my notes into the background script for Idiocracy, what do I find? The Capitol building has been taken over by Beowulf! Are you shitting me? First Contagion, then Idiocracy. What cold plate of shit is going to land on my table when I do Planet of the Apes, huh? I just want to go 5 minutes without being fucked by reality. Is that too much to ask? The story of our film goes all the way back to 2001. Another year that can go suck my... Mike Judge had success with Beavis and Butthead and later on with King of the Hill. He'd already made the jump into films with Beavis and Butthead Do America, and not long after that, the cult film Office Space brought him into the world of live action. For entertainment, I mean. He probably always was three-dimensional. Now, the first tiny seeds of the idea began while working on the Beavis and Butthead movie, when he started getting the idea about evolution running backwards, with humans just getting dumber. But with his other projects, it was just kind of a simmering in the back of his mind sort of thing. But it was in 2001, when he was at Disneyland with his daughters waiting in line, that this really started to come together. He saw this woman with a couple little kids coming by, and there was a lady with a couple little kids behind him. And they must have had some kind of problem with each other. Because in front of the kids, in the middle of Disneyland, it's bitch this and I'll kick your ass that. Just the kind of stuff that embarrasses us all, except those who like seeing strangers fight for stupid reasons, which I'm afraid may be a larger number than we might be comfortable with. Being the year 2001, he was thinking about the famous Space Odyssey film, which is about human evolution to the next level, and that brought back the idea of instead a leap backwards, of, as he put it, Jerry Springer shows and gigantic Walmarts. To write it, he tapped Ethan Cohen, who had worked with Judge before. Cohen actually started out trying to pitch ideas to Beavis and Butthead. He was working as a lowly intern at MTV, and one of his fellow interns lied and said that he was a writer on Beavis and Butthead. Cohen thought that sounded like a really cool job, and tried to get into it in the most obvious way. Call up head writer Christopher Brown to pitch some ideas. Now, Brown was actually nice enough to explain why each idea wouldn't be very good, but amazingly told Cohen to feel free to try again if he had some better ideas. Well, he did. Good enough that, while he was still at Harvard, he received credit for 2 episodes of Beavis and Butthead, Green Thumbs, and Dumbasses Anonymous. Later on, he wrote 10 episodes of King of the Hill, but never any films. But Judge thought that he could get a good handle on this project. Cohen said learning to do films was like being back in film school if you could imagine Mike Judge at the front of the classroom. Anyway, this is the film they wrote, which starts out with an all-knowing narrator. You can tell that it's an all-knowing narrator because it's Earl Mann, the voice of the NFL, speaking. It actually took me a while to find that one out. I mean, not knowing that it was Earl Mann, that just took looking up IMDb, but figuring out who he was from the name was hard because I didn't recognize it. I was like, who is Earl Mann? I mean, I know this voice, but all these things he's in, I have no idea. So I figured there had to be more to it than that, so I went to Google and typed in Earl Mann to find out what it had to say. So Google said, inmate pleads not guilty in murder that sent wrong man to prison. Because there's an Earl Mann who was involved. Not cool when you're a celebrity and you're losing Google to a case that no one has heard of. So, strike one. Gonna have to take another crack at it. So this time I tried Earl Mann voice actor. Figured the odds were good that the murderer was not also a voice actor. That'd be a pretty big coincidence. Well, the top response, if you type in Earl Mann voice actor, is none other than Keith David. This, by the way, is the day to call your agent. If you search for yourself on Google and the top result is, no, you don't want that piece of shit. Here's a real celebrity. Now, don't get me wrong. I'd much rather be mistaken for Keith David than for an alleged murderer. But still, Keith David probably has a fine enough acting career on his own without needing to moonlight as Earl Mann. But yeah, a little bit more digging eventually realized, yeah, he's the NFL narrator guy. So, nice work. You're doing fine in this film. Anyway, thanks to Child's narration, we learned that at the dawn of the 21st century, evolution was going in the wrong direction. To demonstrate why this would happen, we follow a couple, Trevor and Carol, who are intelligent professionals in choosing the right moment, and are complicated by fertility issues. This guy, on the other hand, has all the self-control of a child in a room full of Halloween candy. He is, shall we say, casting his seed hither and yon, making Johnny Appleseed look downright lazy. He'll hump everything. His son is knocking up cheerleaders left and right, and the other members of the family, well, I don't even know what to say about this. This doesn't look like a family tree so much as a battleship model kit made up of faces. We meet our hero, who will soon help save us all, Joe Bowers, played by Luke Wilson. Wilson was really interested in playing this role, so Mike Judge rewrote the film with him specifically in mind. He knew that one thing Wilson could really pull off is something that we'll soon find out: being average.
No one ever comes in here.
Yeah, I know. It's perfect for me. No one bothers me. I can't screw up. If I can just stay in here another 8 years, I get my pension. I'm all set.
I can't help but worry if half of all people would be considered below him.
I don't understand. Why me? Every time Metzler says lead, follow, or get out of the way, I get out of the way.
But it would explain some emails I've gotten recently. Joe is here because he is literally an average Joe. In fact, he's an average of everyone. Intelligence, blood pressure, you name it, he fits in the middle of it. Plus, he has no living relatives or loved ones, so if he were to ever disappear, like in some really ill-advised military experiment, no one but an unpaid Pornhub subscription fee would ever notice. The ill-conceived experiment is in cryogenics, so there's a lot that could potentially go wrong there. That's why they're testing it on GI Average Joe instead of a crack fighter pilot. The only place they could find a female test subject, though, was a sex worker whose only connection is to her pimp, Upgrade.
Let me just finish here. You see, a pimp's love is very different from that of a square.
Why are you wasting our time? We've all read Iceberg Slim. Joe isn't let in on the details around Rita's employment or occupation, so...
So, you an artist or something?
Yeah.
You do paintings or...
Yeah, paintings.
Would make sense. Make art, vanish, art now skyrockets, emerge and sell your undiscovered masterpieces. This might be how the Army is actually funding this. Maya Rudolph plays Rita, who at the moment is probably best known for playing Vice President Kamala Harris on Saturday Night Live. That has nothing to do with anything, but then again, saying nothing that has to do with anything has already got me to page 3 of the script. Why break with a winning formula? Anyway, what goes awry is the all-too-common problem that once you've entered the world of pimping, you just can't shake it. The officer in charge of the experiment is arrested, and in the scandal, the project gets forgotten. So that means that no one was left to wake up Joe and Rita. Outside of their little pods, mankind was getting dumber and dumber, and letting the place go to hell around them until mountains of garbage are around. This predated Wall-E, by the way, but it's hard not to think of that movie while watching some of this one. Anyway, thanks to a garbage avalanche, Joe's pod gets dumped into the apartment of a guy named Frito, although Frito is much too busy watching the popular show Ow My Balls. There's no plot, well, not unless you want to count the traditional idea that plot is any conflict like man against man or man against self. In this case, it's the age-old conflict between testicles and a world filled with far too many blunt or sharp objects. Joe's interruption is not welcome, especially since the armchair is a toilet, so don't interrupt a man on the throne. Joe gets tossed out, so Keith David explains that over the 500 years, English has degraded, more than just using who instead of whom. Their blend of stupid vocabularies is understandable to Joe, but...
When he spoke in an ordinary voice, he sounded pompous and faggy to them.
Yeah, that. The word gets thrown around a lot in the film, because Judge approached this as, what would all the guys who used to insult me in junior high for knowing the answers in class talk like? So yeah, can't argue with that reasoning. In a world like that, helping out a passing stranger is on the list of priorities right below volunteer to do Ow My Balls the home game, so Joe is left with no choice but to try and get medical help at St. God's Memorial Hospital. Things obviously don't look good. The place is apparently not heard of sterility, considering it is absolutely filthy in there. Not just failing to be antiseptic, I wouldn't even eat my lunch in here, never mind seek medical help. Haven't these people ever heard that cleanliness is next to Saint Godliness?
This goes in your mouth. This one goes in your ear. And this one goes in your butt. This one goes in your mouth.
There's nothing that I could ever have that would make me do that. No, thank you. I'll just stick with the cancer, thanks. In the doctor's office, Joe sees the magazine is dated 2505. Now, per the rules of time travel, time shifting, or flash forwards, it must follow one of two rules, either a round number of years or a round year destination, with the obvious exception of specific events. You don't get involved in the Kennedy assassination by going to 1960. Well, not usually. Movie characters don't have that kind of patience. Yet Idiocracy goes forward 499 years from its release of 2006. Well, that's because it was supposed to come out in 2005. Judge actually finished shooting the film in 2004, and then all the nervousness started to creep into it from the studio. Not surprising, because Mike Judge movies constantly have that happen. David Geffen, one of the founders of DreamWorks, actually thought Beavis and Butthead Do America should have been live action. The studio went from begging for office space to despising and screwing with its marketing. Idiocracy went even further. Judge was making Idiocracy for Fox. He was working with them on King of the Hill at this time, which helped to get this deal struck, but then it turned into one of those studio pissing contests. Some suit hasn't gotten the chance to see it. The cost of the special effect is too high, and they have no idea how to market a movie whose premise is dumbass goes to the future to find it's filled with people dumber than him. That's way too complicated to advertise. Mike Judge tried to show a reporter the trailer, build some ground-level buzz around it, but couldn't get permission from anyone to do even that. The trailer was never released. A veteran of 20th Century Fox's advertising department said in 40 years he couldn't recall them ever doing that. There was no press kit, in fact. The NPR story on it has the reporter say, "Here's where I would have played a sound clip from the movie. Clips routinely come in press kits. Studio publicity departments send them to us and Jay Leno and practically everyone else with an FCC license. Nothing came for Idiocracy." Seriously, that's what's in the NPR report. It wound up being released in a total of 7 cities, apparently to satisfy a contractual obligation for a theatrical release to then allow them to do it on DVD. It's been alleged that Fox thought it was going to be a dud, and the best way to get their money back was to get it on DVD as cheaply as possible and allow the cult status of it to then sell videos. Anyway, let's get back to Joe, who is finally seeing a doctor.
Don't want to sound like a dick or nothing, but it says on your chart that you're fucked up. You talk like a fag, and your shit's all retarded.
Whoa, don't hide behind your medical jargon. Just give it to me straight, Doc. When he prints up the bill for this diagnosis, Joe realizes that the misprint of 2505 is no misprint. He's in the future, and the future sucks. But what horrifies the doctor is that Joe has no barcode tattoo on his arm, hitting an alarm and forcing Joe to escape the mad office and into the mad world, where the economy is in tatters, a dust bowl is causing a food shortage.
And the #1 movie in the country was called Ass.
Whatever you think it was, it's likely worse. This is just 90 minutes of a camera pointed at some dude's bare butt, sometimes farting. As Keith David explains, it won 8 Oscars, which means that it was probably a period piece about an ass. Mike Judge actually sat an audience down to watch this for the film and was surprised at just how hard they were laughing at it. "Ass is the movie we should have made," he complained. To be fair, I'm pretty certain what they found hysterical was just the fact that something so stupid existed. After all, Idiocracy is a comedy about stupidity. If people don't laugh at the moronically ridiculous, then this movie would have been pointless to make. People watching Idiocracy laugh at the ass. Why wouldn't the people watching it without the surrounding movie laugh at it? It's at this point that I'm kind of at a loss. I've managed to tread water thus far, but this is where I'm facing a wall of taffy, if I might mix metaphors so I have something to say. What I mean is, I can't really crack wise about a comedy, and there's only so much I could tell you about how it was made, as we've established. So with both of those options off the table, the only tools left in my toolbox are address the film's ideas in a serious way, or examine the film itself in a serious way. Given that this is a film about stupidity with a title that makes that point very clear, and features the hit movie Ass, that's just inviting people to say that any serious criticism of those aspects is missing the point or taking it too seriously. Now, I can not take it seriously, but I'm not sure what that would accomplish. Hence the wall of taffy. I'm stuck. There's not much point in me going on, but since I wanted to do this review 2 presidents ago, thanks again, Disney, I'd only be more of a jerk if only after all that time, when I finally got around it, I were to, well, half-ass it. I don't want to waste your time, but I don't want to look like I phoned this review in either. If this was a challenge to try to find a film that would beat me, congratulations, you found it. I have been bested. So anyway, I'm going to plug on. My hope is that when this review ends, you'll be able to say, well, that was shit, but I can see that at least he tried. Anyway, back to the film. Joe gets a sign of how things work when some woman tries to get some fries from a Carl's Jr. only to get an empty box, charged for it anyway, and then drugged when she tries to complain.
Your kids are starving. Carl's Jr. believes no child should go hungry. You are an unfit mother. Your children will be placed in the custody of Carl's Jr. Carl's Jr. Fuck you. I'm eating.
It's been alleged that one of the reasons the film was treated the way it was by Fox was because of all the companies having second thoughts about how they were being represented in the film. Can't imagine why Carl's Jr. would object to being a faceless child-stealing monolith with the slogan, "Fuck you, I'm eating." That is just speculation, though. It's just as possible that the film was screwed up because movie studios screw things up. That's their function. Screwing up is their raison d'etre. Well, Carl's Jr. has sicked the cops on that lady, but they spot Joe and arrest him instead for not having a barcode. So he's dragged before Wolverine's inbred uncle here for trial. What's just as bad is finding out his court-appointed lawyer is none other than Frito, the guy who tossed Joe out of his apartment in the middle of Ow My Balls.
Robbed a hospital? Why'd you do that?
Yeah, I'm not guilty.
That's not what the other lawyer said.
26th century John Grisham novels are pretty short, I guess. Frito all too quickly turns on Joe, and the judge is doing everything short of sharpening an axe, so Joe is found guilty and shipped off to jail. Meanwhile, Rita, whose pod was shown to have also opened, is trying to figure this place out. She managed to get a prostitution gig, which consists entirely of making this guy wait for it, which I joke about, but the problem is he looks like the smartest person we've found so far. Joe is dragged off to be put into the system, accidentally gets named Not Sure, and then is tattooed. Despite that embarrassing and very permanent screw-up, Joe is then taken to get an aptitude test. You know, this reminds me of a guy I knew in college who, started sophomore year, decided that college wasn't for him and took a test for the Air Force. Apparently, he completely blew the curve. We were a bit concerned that the guy we'd once seen trying to grill a sandwich with Everclear in a match might wind up working at NORAD or NASA. Anyway, in the future, prison is no less screwed up than it is today, so Joe takes one look and formulates a cunning escape plan.
Excuse me, I'm actually supposed to be getting out of prison today, sir.
Yeah. You're in the wrong line, dumbass. Over there.
I'm sorry, I am being a big dumbass.
Sorry.
Of course, it's not quite that simple. He does have to make a run for it afterwards. Escaping jail isn't a cakewalk, it's a cake run. He heads back to Frito's place, who is not happy because he's masturbating to a woman cutting up dinner with her feet. So we found a descendant of Quentin Tarantino. Joe's hoping that, by now, someone will have invented a time machine that can send him back home, and after a few false starts, Frito says that, yeah, we got one of those, but it's expensive. So Joe promises to use the longevity compound interest trick in order to get Frito stinking rich, if that'll help him pull this off. They're also lucky enough to spot Rita and grab her so she can head back to their own time too. There's a lot of painting that needs to be done. Thanks to that barcode, Frito's car gets flagged and the battery is shut down by the man. So there's nothing to do but start hoofing it to try to get to the time machine. Only... While Frito may be cheering at his own car being destroyed, Joe still needs him to get to the time machine. So they head across the waste to get to Costco, and when a store says that they have everything under one roof, I never thought they meant the totality of existence.
We've been walking forever. You sure you know where you're going?
Yeah, I know this place is pretty good. I went to law school here.
Made good use of the membership card. All I got was a discount on an air fryer. On the way, he spots a Starbucks inside offering sexual services. Ditto the neighboring H&R Block, which is appropriate given how hard I got fucked on my taxes last year. Rita heads off to hit the head before the shuttle comes to take them to the time machine. But while trying to rein in Frito's display of his sexual technique, Joe's tattoo gets scanned, and his fugitive status is broadcast, announcing he is wanted for, quote, for being a dick, for escaping from jail, for fucking up lots of shit. So he's caught, while Rita... I was honestly wondering if this directed you to where you could watch a woman use a toilet. Rita comes out just in time to see Joe arrested, but instead of prison, he's brought to Washington, D.C. to work for the government. I mean, why skip the intermediary step of committing a crime when we can just grab a criminal already? Have someone who's got the skill down pat, I say. Joe's IQ test made him the smartest man on earth, so the president has put him in the cabinet to solve their problems, since he can't solve starvation with a body slam. It will require convincing Congress, though. Luckily, the Secretary of Persuasion is very good at its job. The president's plan is for Joe to come up with a plan. And as incentive, Joe has 1 week or he's going to get an ass kicking and then go back to jail. Well, Joe has no idea how to solve this, so he has Frito brought in to help him get directions on how to get to the time machine. That's got much better odds than solving the problems 10 billion or so idiots can cause. But Frito's map is as useless as the one for the Rickenbacker in System Shock 2, so Joe and the newly arrived Rita get back to trying to solve the famine problem. Fortunately, the answer is actually pretty simple. Even someone who has only the most rudimentary knowledge like Joe can see it. It's Brondo, their version of Gatorade. We'd seen it used in a drinking fountain earlier. Now we see it's being used on the crops. That's what's killing them. So he orders them to switch over to water instead. That radical. That unfortunately leads to catastrophe. Essentially, the automation made by smarter people in the past is the only thing keeping things going, being advanced enough to solve basic problems now that everybody has stopped thinking. So Brondo has taken over a whole bunch of things. That's why it's used everywhere. But now that it's not being spent on watering crops, the shares tanked and brought the economy along with it. So everyone blames Joe for the economic downturn. Being outside my area of expertise, I've called a Zoom meeting to try to hash this issue out. So, joining us from 1981 Leningrad is children's television star Comrade Puppet.
Кто со мной играет в прятки, убегайте без оглядки, я иду искать.
It's Comrade Puppet Show with me, Comrade Puppet, and friends. So, would you please give us your informed take on Idiocracy and its themes?
Oh, yes. Now, I know the oppressed members of the working class will appreciate that this film exposes the failure of Western culture. It shows a future that is the inevitable result of the capitalist pig dogs operating without shackles. It is an indictment of both corporate power and rampant consumerism. The decadence of Western appetites have led to their own downfall.
Comrade Puppet, I can't help but notice that you're looking off camera while you're talking as if you were reading cue cards. You're not being prompted by the KGB, are you? You know, let's just let that go. Let me introduce our other panelists today.
You cannot be here. You are a robot. Robots are traitors to the proletariat by taking power from the working class.
Oh, so sorry that we gave you more time to stand in line for bread and toilet paper.
As I was saying, this is a good friend of the show, Tim. Tim was an understudy for a very popular show in the 90s, but never actually appeared, and it should be emphasized, has no connection whatsoever to that studio and is not in any way attempting to represent himself or his views as being indicative of theirs. Tim, I wanted to thank you for joining us under these trying circumstances.
Thanks. So, to address Comrade Overall's criticisms, he's missing the point that in the future, everyone, the whole world, is dumber. That indicates a trend that's irrespective of culture. Otherwise, other nations would have risen up and exploited the ones that are full of idiots.
Not so. First, Western consumerism is spreading throughout the world, and this film shows it is a poison pill. It goes down easily, but you pay a terrible price. And second, even if other nations were smarter, countries with an atomic arsenal will be indulged, because their leaders would no longer be smart enough to realize the fallout of atomic war would kill them too.
The premise of the film is quite clear. Everyone in the whole world is getting stupider.
But the film's reasoning is that the smart people aren't making as many babies as the stupid ones because of social and technological advancement. That would not apply to other nations without it. But even if it did, that would only mean that they fell into the trap of Western culture.
But those are two different things, Chekhov. Consumerism may be part of Western culture, but it's not related to the decisions that led to the geniuses not making babies. They did it to ensure they could provide the best life for the child once they did have one.
Exactly. Best meaning to have hoarded money and purchased things to pamper the child with a comfortable life thanks to the soft middle-class lifestyle. Their pursuit of finery led to their own extinction while building a house of cards for the growing population of stupids that we see is coming crashing down around them.
Look, the issue isn't about culture. It's about medical science. Evolution is all about survival of the fittest. The idiots weren't being killed off, so they drowned out everyone else until everyone was an idiot. That's why it's a global event, not Western culture.
But if that were the case, then the film would not be showing corporate control prominently and the wastefulness of consumerism. It is clearly presented to show cause and effect.
No, it's there to show the consequences of humans becoming morons. They then turn control of their lives over to authority, corporations or government, so they don't have to solve their own problems. No one is out there trying to figure out why the crops won't grow. They just complain to the government to fix it. No social services is there to deal with starving children, so corporations are taking them away to raise them. Corporate control is just one symptom of the surrendering of personal autonomy for the sake of convenience, even laziness.
That does not match with the fact that this man made Office Space, clearly an anti-corporate film. Mike Judge has a low opinion of corporations, and that is the lens through which we must view Idiocracy, and can see it is also an anti-corporate film.
Office Space attacked corporate culture, but it also showed a lack of personal accountability led to numerous downfalls in the film, ignoring problems in the hope that they would go away. Peter's rise up the corporate ladder showed advancement followed those who just didn't care. It subversively suggested that their bosses were clueless, superfluous flotsam whose inattention led to the company's downfall. If anything, Office Space supports the interpretation that Idiocracy is about the abdication of accountability leading to downfall. After all, didn't the people dump all the problems on the president and he just dumped them all on Joe?
Even if that were so, we see that people are living in filth, too spoiled and lazy to care about living in garbage. A clear indictment of your consumerist culture taken to its logical conclusion. Enjoy for the moment, but darn the consequences!
Sure, people are too dumb to take proper care of themselves and their environment in this reality, and maybe that's an indictment of their society. But it is reflective of the theme of overall irresponsibility. It's not as if corporations are part of the solution here. I'm not arguing that. We see they're just as stupid as everyone else is. They should be incentivized to find the answers to the crops because they process food for consumption by the idiot masses, but they're passing the responsibility on to the president. So I'm not saying rah-rah corporations, because after all, we see that they still hold ridiculous sway over our lives. But not because of some nefarious plan, but because everyone is looking for someone else to solve their problems.
Well, don't forget the naughtiness of the future as well. We see all these companies are selling naughtiness alongside the products they normally sell. They may not even sell them anymore, just the naughtiness.
Yes, that also ties back to what got them into this mess in the first place. The army officer wanted to get into the world of selling sex, and in the future, everyone is selling sex. Seems ironic if you ask me.
I am not allowed to talk so much about the topic of naughtiness. Why are we even talking about this movie anyway?
Because no one can say, those puppets are taking this way too seriously, and not look like they're the idiot here.
Well, thank you both for your insights, gentlemen. I should probably get back to the film. As the reporters explained, Joe is being brought to answer for his actions. And because no one is smart enough to understand anything, he gets sentenced to a night of rehabilitation. The word rehabilitation has changed somewhat over the centuries. It now means a mashup between a Roman Colosseum and a monster truck rally. After a plea to Rita to go back in time and try to prevent this future by encouraging people to not be lazy slackers like he was, Joe is brought for rehabilitation. Sad that is much better than Joe's fate. Joe is going to be facing 2 monster trucks that are armed with mining equipment, while he has a compact that's armed with a purple dildo. It's also weighted down because they chained him to a boulder so he couldn't escape again, and I guess they really don't want to take it off. But good news, Rita has spotted a plant growing thanks to the water, which is proof that Joe did the right thing. So she and Frito race to get to the arena to try to save Joe. But the president is far more interested in the match than hearing about any alleged crops. So Rita bribes the cameraman and Frito to go film the crops so that they can appear on the Jumbotron and prove that the water is working. If you see it on the Jumbotron, it must be real. That's just logic. Meanwhile, Joe has done fairly well, accidentally getting yanked out of the car by the boulder, causing the 2 trucks to smash into and destroy each other. There's just one fly left in the ointment, a fly by the name of Beef Supreme, whose truck was too big to get into the arena, so he has to settle for a flamethrower and a grenade launcher against an unarmed man who's chained to a rock. But Beef... Oh, another movie with a guy named Beef in it. Is this going to be a trend for the year? Anyway, Beef didn't prepare for facing the world's smartest man. He winds up freeing Joe from the boulder, and eventually, Joe's able to climb up to where the mic is and try to plead his case. It better be good, because Frito and Camera Guy forget why they came the moment they see a Starbucks and go inside for some sex. The problem is inspiring speeches that appeal to the best side of people don't work well on idiots looking for blood. So, it's lucky that in Frito's homophobic retaliation to Camera Guy, the camera lands by the crops and reminds Frito of what he's supposed to be doing out here. He races up the rows of budding plants while Rita shows it on the Jumbotron, and that's enough for the president to personally come down and toss aside Beef's ass in order to pardon Joe for his crimes. That's the kind of speech that wins people over. A good old-fashioned shove. In fact, the Prez wants Joe to be his new vice president to help them with all of their problems. Joe would rather go home, but all the pleading faces convince him that it's time to stop getting out of the way and start being part of the solution. Turns out the time machine was just an amusement park ride anyway, though this does bring us full circle for the film. The movie started with people going on an amusement park ride about the future and ends with people going on an amusement park ride about the past. And, as Goliath explains to us, Joe is soon going to become president, help inspire people, marry Rita, and have 3 smart kids, who we hope better be really, really fertile. Overall, The film is okay. It's definitely a Beavis and Butthead successor to me, in that there's humor in watching idiots be clueless. As for the assertion that this is a prediction of our future of stupidity, satire works by basing it within reality, but exaggerating it. You can always find someone, somewhere, to push the boundaries beyond the pale, and people might even find that momentarily amusing. We also have been living in a world where transformation, breaking down old boundaries and questioning previous limitations and assumptions, has been going on for well over half a century now. It's not surprising that in the give and take, you'll see something that was mocked in this movie. The film isn't here to be a cautionary tale, it's here to entertain. If there's any real message behind it, then it's not about us becoming dumber. It's about us being lazy and complacent, and the need for us, all of us, to rise above that.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord! It shows a future that is the